I am Lenrod Nzulu Baraka, founder of Afro-Caribbean Spiritual Teaching Center and Children of Kush publications. These two organizations are dedicated to creating a paradigm shift in Black thought. My main objective is to challenge people of African ancestry to think outside the box of Jewish, Christian, European, and Islamic thought. I seek to achieve this objective by writing and circulating articles among people of African ancestry here in the Caribbean, and hopefully we expect these articles eventually to go as far as the wider African diaspora and onto the continent of Africa as well. Then we also publish videos on social media like this one. And thirdly, we publish and circulate books by Children of Kush publications. Children of Kush publications is currently expanding and promoting a series of books entitled Secrets Your Church Won't Tell You. The 8 books in the series are: number 1, The Rebirth of Black Civilization, Making Africa and the Caribbean Great Again. Number 2, The Future of Africa and the Caribbean, Challenges and Possibilities. Number 3, Oreos, Coconuts and Negropeans, Rediscovering Our African Identity. Number 4, Out of Babylon, Why Black People Should Leave Most Churches. Number 5, Fortified Chicken Broth for Black Souls, Secrets Your Church Won't Tell You. Number 6, The Grand Failure, How Christianity Became a Force for Evil in the World. Number 7, Is God a Moral Monster? And finally, number 8, The Church That Changed Its God, The Rise and Fall of Seventh-day Adventism. The 8 books are available from Amazon Kindle Store as ebooks and in hard copy. To see a full listing of books from Children of Kush publication, you can go to my Amazon author page, which is amazon.com/author/Leonard Phillips. Let me repeat that again. Amazon.com/author/Leonard Phillips, and it's all in lowercase. Or you can type in Leonard R. Phillips or Lenrod Nzulu Baraka, or the title of the books you are interested in on the Amazon Kindle search page. To watch more of my videos on YouTube, just type in Lenrod Nzulu Baraka in the YouTube search bar. And please remember, don't forget to like, to subscribe, and to share my YouTube videos with all your friends and contacts in the diaspora and on the continent of Africa. Your support for this initiative is greatly appreciated. I am Lenrod Nzulu Baraka, reminding you that the more you learn, the more you realize how little you really know. Asante sana, which is Kiswahili for thank you. In this 3-part series, I propose to explore a subject that has receded from the minds of most people today. This subject, however, has cast a long historical shadow and continues to influence many aspects of contemporary life. Thought crimes or heresy and blood crimes which resulted in Jewish persecution and the Holocaust under the Nazis occasioned a wave of terror across Europe and eventually in the New World. The terror, referred to by historians as the Inquisition, was responsible for the death, imprisonment, exile, dismemberment, and torture of hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children in Europe and in the New World. Now, in part 1, I will explore the factors that precipitated the birth of the Inquisition. Then, in part 2, I will focus on the procedures followed by the Inquisitors as they went about their deadly work of establishing totalitarian control over the hearts, minds, and souls of all of Christendom. And then in part 3, I will shift from the past into the present and explore how the Inquisition has cast a shadow on nations, institutions, and events transpiring in the modern world. In his highly acclaimed novel 1984, George Orwell coined the term thought crimes to describe politically unorthodox thoughts, inclusive of beliefs and doubts that contradicted the tenets of the dominant ideology of the ruling class in the novel. In 1984, the ruling class not only were in absolute control of individuals' speech and action, but they also sought control over individual thought as well. To achieve this unprecedented level of control, the thought police spied on the population through two-way telescreens, which provided continuous data on body language, speech, and facial expression. And if you have been following technology today, you would see the similarities. We live at a time where there's all pervasiveness of the cell phone. We have television sets, we have surveillance cameras everywhere, and of course there's satellite technology. Now, long before the totalitarianism described by George Orwell in his novel 1984, long before the totalitarian of the Nazi regime or the totalitarianism of the Stalinist purges in the Soviet Union, the medieval church had already perfected a totalitarian system that sought to control speech, action, and thought. This system started to be formalized in the 12th century and lasted until the 15th of July 1834, when it was finally abolished in Europe. This system of absolute control exercised by the medieval church is what we mean when we talk about the Inquisition. Before we get any further, therefore, let us define a number of terms. What exactly was the Inquisition? Well, the Inquisition was an office or a department set up by the medieval church to root out and punish heresy throughout Europe and the Americas. Since the Inquisition was all about punishing heresy, we need to understand what heresy was. Heresy basically then was beliefs or opinions which were different or contrary to the standard or orthodox doctrines of the church. Now, since beliefs and opinions are held in our minds, the Inquisition was all about punishing thoughts. Therefore, we have the term thought crimes. And what are blood crimes? Blood crimes refer to when a people are punished for being a part of a particular ethnic group. For example, Jews were persecuted and killed in Europe both by the church and later by the Nazis simply because they were Jews. Now, anyone familiar with church history would know that the Christian church started off as a persecuted minority. In the 4th century, after Constantine supposedly converted to Christianity, he gifted the church with wealth, power, and the capacity to perpetrate obscene amounts of violence on its enemies. After Constantine's supposed conversion to Christianity, the church transformed itself from a persecuted minority to a powerful persecuting majority. From the 4th century onward, the church used its muscle against any individual or group that dared to challenge any teachings of the church. By the 12th century, when the office of the Inquisition was officially set up, The church already had a long, bloody history of persecuting and killing its enemies. The burning of heretics started in earnest in the 11th century and picked up momentum in the 12th century when the Inquisition was formally launched. By the 12th century, a moral rot had set in within Christendom. The rot was all-pervasive, affecting both the secular and the ecclesiastical realm. Kings and queens ruled as tyrants, dispatching their subjects into the afterlife for the most trivial of reasons. Political corruption was matched by the corruption existing at all levels of the church, from the parish priest, who was very often no more enlightened than the flock he led, all the way up to the chair of St. Peter, where the Pope sat. Notwithstanding their vows of celibacy, many popes, cardinals, bishops, and priests had mistresses and children from their mistresses. Clerks were implicated in licit and illicit forms of sexuality. Men of cloth were accused not only of fornication and adultery, but also of homosexuality and, in a few cases, bestiality. Rumors also abounded about sex orgies in high places in Christendom. Another problem facing the church was the moral problem of simony. Since positions in the church hierarchy conferred both wealth and power on the holder of such offices, simony, or the buying and selling of religious office, became widespread. Totally unfit and unworthy candidates were elevated to holy office simply because they had the wealth to purchase the position. Yet another problem facing the church was the problem of nepotism. Now, nepotism is closely connected to the corruption of simony, and it represented an unethical practice of bestowing holy office on close families and friends. Nobles and clerks alike would elevate close relatives to high positions in the church. A classic example of nepotism was the appointment of Caesar Borgia as cardinal by his father, Pope Alexander VI. Just as an aside, it is quite possible that President Trump may have been trying to resurrect nepotism by surrounding himself while in office by his family members. Yet another problem facing the church was the problem of greed. The medieval church always stood in need of money. And of course, the need for money was for many good things that the church was doing. For example, churches needed to be built, monasteries and colleges needed to be funded, salaries had to be paid. So there was always a need for money within the church, and the money had to be raised by hook or by crook. The selling of indulgences was a big hit in the medieval church. It should be remembered that it was the sale of indulgences that prompted a German monk by the name of Martin Luther to nail his 95 Theses to the door of the castle church in Wittenberg. This fundraising scheme involving the sale of indulgences, which were promises of forgiveness for future sins, was one of the catalysts that launched the Protestant Reformation. The church was fleecing the poor while the hierarchy of the church lived like princes, enjoying the fat of the land. And if you look at the religious scene today, you would see that much has not really changed. The moral fallout in the medieval church resulted in widespread dissatisfaction with spiritual life among the people. Many began to compare the stories they'd heard about a poor Jesus and his disciples with the lavish lifestyle of bishops and cardinals and popes. There were orthodox voices that started calling for reform within the church. Other voices, however, boldly declared that the church had deviated from the right path and had become apostate or a false church. These dissident voices called for separation from the apostate church and the launching of a restored form of Christianity. And so we had the emergence of groups like the Bogomils, the Cathars, and the Waldensian Christians, who protested against the corruption and abuse of power demonstrated by the medieval church. It was these dissenting voices that drove the church to formally devise a system to eradicate these dissenting voices. The extermination system emerged as the office of the Inquisition. Now, in the next presentation, I will explore how the office of the Inquisition functioned, and we will begin to see how the Inquisition laid the foundation for the totalitarian terror that would emerge in the 20th century and beyond. I'm Lenrod Nzulu Baraka, reminding you that history repeats itself because no one listens the first time around. Please remember to like, to subscribe, and to share this video with all your friends and contacts in the Caribbean, in the wider African diaspora, and on the continent of Africa. Asante sana na kwaheri, which is Kish Swahili for thank you very much and goodbye.